This is the Zing laser training video. This is a Zing 24-inch model, meaning that it can accept material up to 24 inches wide, 12 inches deep. The height of the unit pretty much to around 6-7 inches of material can be underneath it, and it's only going to cut through material that's up to a quarter inch thick, and that is very specific. It has to be like a basswood, balsa wood. The laser is a 50-watt model, and it has a vector cutting grid in it. Right now, there's also a rotary attachment that is available for the unit just down here underneath the machine. That can be installed later, and I'll show that in the video. Patrons or users will have to log in with their barcode. So go ahead, take your Onondaga County Library card number and put that into the barcode space here. Once logged in, you'll see that you will have a meter here telling you how much time is left. You have 2 hours to utilize the machine. So once you're logged in, you'll want a few items. First thing, the material that you'll be cutting with. Whether it's an engraving, you could be using glass, you could be engraving on wood, you could do aluminum, or you can even do plastics, like laserable plastics, like acrylic. You'll want to have that with you. You also want to have your file or your design elements, whether that it's picture files like JPEGs or PNG files, scalable vector graphics, and what we'll use is Corel Draw, which is a program to help kind of interface with the laser cutter. It's where you are going to have your design. You'll also have the layout of your material on it, so you can see everything virtually, and then we'll send that off to the laser cutter. Right now I'm keeping the laser cutter off because it makes some noise, but otherwise we would want to turn on that little power switch there on the surge protector, and then there's a side power switch right here. Turn that on. We'll do that in a little bit once we get set up. So let's open up Corel Draw. This is Corel Draw X8, and here I'm going to just briefly go through some of the most important and widely used tools on Corel Draw. First thing here, go ahead and go to File and New, and you'll get a little welcome screen here. Just go over to our untitled one here, and the first thing that you want to take a look at is this. This is your document size. So if I have a piece of material that is 12 inches by 12 inches, I would want to put that right here as 12 by 12. If we're using something like the wood that I have here, then we want this horizontal number to be 20 inches, and we want our vertical number to be 8. That's 20 by 8. Hit enter, and now our page has changed. That page should now be representative of the piece that you have. So now we can see that we have 20 across the top, 8 down. You'll also see that there are a series of ruler markers along the top and on the side. Sometimes it's kind of confusing. This starts off 0 on the x-axis, but the y-axis actually starts at 0 down here. To change that, just click and drag in the corner of the ruler, and you will drag to start a new axis point. And now this is 0, 0, and this would be 8 inches in the y, and this would be 20 inches in the x. So our first most common use of this machine is to engrave text. There is a text tool here. We're just going to click on the text tool, and instead of clicking and dragging to create a box, just click one time to drop the cursor. With that cursor dropped, now you could go ahead and start to type in what you'd want to say on your material. And now we can go ahead and drag using those corner brackets to change the size. You could also change the font. I'm just going to select it here. And in the top right, we should have, under what's called Object Properties, we have the font type and then the styling elements to it. The list is pretty long, and there's a whole bunch that you could use. And as long as you've selected it and highlighted it, as you scroll down through them, you'll see them automatically update in your space on your material. So you'll see my cursor now says A, or has an A following it. It just means that we still have the font tool attached to our mouse. you'll want to make sure that you always kind of select the pick tool, which is on the top left of your panel up there. So we're going to select the pick tool, and that just drops it. So now we could click anywhere on our space. It's kind of let go of the font. If we want to move that font around, I could just click on the black space. I could also zoom in and zoom out using the scroll wheel. When you're doing font like this, the next kind of question is, well, how do I align this on my workspace? This piece of font here has 9 black boxes around it. There's one in the middle that's actually like an X. This is representative on this icon that's in the top left, way up here. It's called Object Origin. And this is actually an interactive button. If I select one of the small little white boxes, it'll change the one that it's measuring this piece from using the ruler markings that we kind of set up when we first opened the document. Right now, it is set for the center origin of this piece. So the center is right there. And with this selected, I can see that there's an XY coordinate for that exact center point. And I see that it's 9.67 and minus 3.852. If I want that to be centered, we know that the width of that material is 20. So we would want the X value here to be 10, half the amount. And since we know that this is 8 inches in the Y direction, we'd want this to be a minus 4. Minus 4 inches, hit enter. That makerspace logo now is right in the center of our piece. If you need to measure off of, say, the top left corner, you go up to the icon and press the top left box, and now we have a coordinate that is based off of this corner box. We like to keep it on the center since that's the most widely used measurement or origin. Another common question is, how do I rotate this? The rotate tool is right here, and you'll see that it says angle of rotation, and it works counterclockwise, counterintuitively. It's going to work counterclockwise, so if I put in 90 degrees, it's going to rotate counterclockwise, and you'll see it like that. 270, it'll kind of flip it to what would be like clockwise if we rotated that way, 90 degrees, but 270 degrees kind of flips us that way. Let's put it back to normal, 0. Up here you'll also see the object size. So right now we see that it's 7.338 inches in length, and it's 1 inch tall. Let's say that we have a need for those letters to be no more than 1 inch tall. What we could do is we could lock the dimensions, and what we can do is change that value to just 1 inch and hit enter. Locking the dimensions make it so that they move proportionally, and unlocking makes them move independently. The next most common question with font is how to make it so that the letters are cut out and not just engraved. So engraved just meaning just a shallow kind of etching. How do we actually pop those letters out? Or how do I just have the outline etched and not the entire font thickness? To do that, that's over here. That's in your Object Properties panel. Object Properties, and we can see that right here we have an outline width, and it's set to none. If we want to vector cut this, vector cut meaning vector cut through or cut through the material completely. Remember, we can only cut through at most up to 1/8 of an inch in certain woods, soft woods. If we want to do that, we need to go over here and choose a hairline thickness for the outline. Now that didn't really look like it made any changes to our font. That's because right now we have a uniform fill type. As long as this is filled in, the machine will still see it as a raster, which is an engraving. So it's just charring away the thickness of the font. If we want to vector cut it, we need to make sure that we get rid of this uniform fill, or at least let the printer know that we are not looking to raster cut this. Just to play it safe, if we take uniform fill and we say no fill, you'll see we have just the outline that is a hairline thickness. The laser cutter will see that as a vector line, and remember, vector is a cut line, cutting through the material. Our next most common question with the laser cutter is how to get an image onto our workspace. To do that, It's really best to just come with the image that you have already on a flash drive, plug it into the front of the computer, and the best way to import those files is to actually go into a window kind of view and navigate to where your file is using the File Explorer. The other way to get image files on here is just go ahead, use Firefox as our browser on here, find the image you would like, and then you can save it. You can save it to the Downloads folder. Once you have your file, it's best to find it and then drag it into your workspace. So here's our image that was taken in. And what we could do is we could leave this just like that, or we can go ahead and edit this. There is a little bit of a marking down on the bottom right. Let's edit this so that we could crop that out. To crop something off of an image, you can go into the Edit Bitmap button that's right here. Edit Bitmap will open a new program. It has a red icon that will pop up here, and it's Corel's photo editor. So once that Corel Photo Paint program opens, here's a crop tool. We can just crop out that little logo there. There we go. And another thing that you'll want to do on images like this is to make sure that the backdrop is actually white. Probably the best, most effective way to do that is just to go into the Adjust and then the Brightness and Contrast tool right here. And you'll want to just kind of blow these out so that the brightness is low, contrast is already as high as possible. Sometimes images will come in and they'll kind of be in this kind of more middle range, and that actually makes it so that the white is not pure white, and it will kind of leave an imprint from the laser cutter. So if we kind of blow out the brightness here, make it really low, contrast way up, click OK. We now have gotten rid of that little icon on the bottom. Click on Finish Editing, and we'll say Save. So now that we're back, you'll see that the icon is gone, and we're ready to engrave that. Another common use and function that people want done using Corel Draw is to do just an outline trace, kind of like how we did the lettering, but to do that to an image. Now that image right here has got too much detail along the edges. It's not as kind of a clean cut per se. So that depends more on the image itself. But let's take a look at an image that we can do. Something kind of simple, let's say like something like this carrot. If I drag that over into our workspace, so here's our carrot. Now if I want to just outline cut this, meaning that all this black area will be removed from the piece of wood, there's an option up here to just do a trace bitmap. Once that's selected, click on Trace Bitmap and do a quick trace. This works probably 90% of the time. Do a quick trace, and now we should have a copy with much cleaner edges. You can see the edges here are very clean versus our original one, which is kind of pixelated. We could get rid of this original one. I'm just going to hit the delete button. So now that we've done that outline trace, we've got nice clean edges on it. We're going to take a look at the object properties, take a look at outline. You'll see that it says none. Go over there, change that to hairline. Every time there's a hairline outline, that is a vectored line, a line that the laser can cut through the material. You can notice that all of a sudden we got this black box around the object. That happens sometimes. Just go ahead, right click on your object, click on Ungroup, click Off, then click back on like the line segment you want to delete. Select it, hit delete. Hit this one, hit delete. Delete. All right, so now we should, as I'm dragging it around, you could kind of get a preview of it. You could see the blue line, letting you know that's the vector line. And that means that we can cut out that carrot. If we want to just eliminate the fill, just so you can see that line a little better, just go down here to where it says fill on object properties, just take that off, and there's that vector line that we took from a JPEG, traced it, we then ungrouped the line segments and then deleted the ones we didn't want, and now we have just a perfect outline of that carrot. That is something that the machine can cut out of the piece of wood. Or if we leave it so that there is a fill, it can engrave it just like it would to this picture. One last tool that's pretty helpful is this. Once an object is selected, you'll see that alongside the angle of rotation, there's also a mirroring tool. We can mirror horizontally or mirror vertically. Go ahead, I'm going to click on mirror. I'm going to go and click on mirror horizontally. And I can also change the size of this. Using the shift tool will allow you to scale things proportionally if they're not already. Those are the basics to using this program, but this will cover probably 90–95% of what you'll want to use the laser cutter for. A lot of it comes down to the prep, having the material and the pictures that you want already, not having to find them on the fly while you're here. It also counts against you on time. So having the images that you want and then piecing it together on Corel Draw makes things quicker. And then the other thing too is just placement, which all comes down to however you want it to be. Making sure that you use the object position tools here to make sure that things are centered and in the placement that you'd like. The laser cutter will do exactly what you tell it to do. So be precise here to get the results that you want there. Once that's ready, I like to click off into a white space. That will only show you the document or the material sizes that you put in, and that's going to be helpful for a second. We're going to go to File and Print, and our preview, you can see, does not look like the material and the image that we want. That's okay. You always will need to go into Preference. This is the Laser Properties print panel. This is where you will want to use the clipboard with all the power and speed settings on it to input the values for your material into this properties panel here. For us, for speed, I'm just going to go down to 250 resolution. A job type, we're going to do combined. Remember, vector means it's going to cut through the material. Raster is just going to engrave the material, like carve it, like etch it out, make it darkened. A vector is a very, very thin line, and it's only used for cutting. So we're going to do both. We're going to do combined. Because we have a piece of wood that's about 1/4 inch thick, we're going to use the settings that we could find right here. And we are going to put in for the raster at 250, we're going to put in a speed of 60 and a power of 100. So under the raster settings, speed of 60, power 100. Under the vector cutting properties, we're going to go to 1/4 inch, and we're going to go 40 speed, 100 power, 500 frequency. So we have 40, 100, and then 500. This is the most important step, and this is what people forget the most. The last and most important piece to change is the piece size. This setting here must be the same as your document up here. And that's another reason why to go and click off of anything that you have selected before you hit print, because it'll be a little reminder, and it's going to show you the right size, the size that you input right here. So we put in 20 inches by 8. We're going to make sure that in our piece size we put in 20 inches by 8. 28. There's nothing else that you should change here. We don't want to use center engraving because you've been measuring everything off of the coordinate system that Corel Draw has. Everything should be positioned exactly how you want it, and that's how the machine is set up to go off of the top left corner of your material, not off the center. So leave that unchecked, click OK, Your preview will change, and I like to go into print preview right here. Now let's go and set up our machine. So our first step here, turn on the surge protector and make sure the machine is on. So I've placed the material inside the machine. It is on the vector cutting grid. That has to be installed. That is the grid there. It needs to be installed if you are cutting out any parts out of the wood. If you're only doing an engraving, it can be removed, but we like to just keep it in there. With the material in place in the top left corner, we are going to now go over to our panel. Select focus. At that moment, the laser will kind of stick out the laser gantry here, and there is a little tab that kind of swings down, and this is our focal length. That is the length that the material should be from the laser, and you can see right now it is swinging very freely. It's not touching the material, so that means that the bed has to come up. So we're going to go over to our panel and go ahead and press up until we get it so that the material is just touching the bottom of that focal length meter. Just like that. Now that's set. Place it back up onto the little carrier, push it out of the way, and then don't forget, hit reset. Once the focal length has been set, you can go over to your print screen, which is on the print preview, and I like to just hit Control and P. That will send the job over to the laser. You can see here's our job, Untitled 1. Right now the lid is open. If you want to make sure that everything seems like it'll work in the right area, of the workpiece, you could run the job, hit go with the lid open. The laser won't fire. And if you want to see just a pointer laser to get an idea of where everything is, just turn on the pointer laser, and a little red dot will light up underneath where the laser will fire. It will never fire with the lid open. I feel confident about where we are with this. We've measured everything out, so we are ready to hit go. Well, this is engraving. It's good to mention these items that we never want to cut in the laser cutter. That includes PVC, polycarbonate, which is like Lexan, that's the trade name for it. Kind of like Kleenex is a name for tissue. Lexan is the brand name for polycarbonate. We can't cut that in here. ABS, milk bottle plastic, polystyrene foam, polypropylene foam, fiberglass, and then coated carbon fibers. So as this is starting to finish up that raster or an engraving pass, it's going to switch over to do the vector or the cutting pass, which is much more deliberate, and it doesn't go into unnecessary space here. As you can kind of see it kind of going back and forth, kind of following over areas it doesn't need to. The vector pass, you may start to see like some flames shoot up. That's okay. If you ever have something like a flare-up, keep the lid closed, power down the machine, hitting the stop button, and just have a staff member come over. 99.999% of the time, it just ends up kind of exhausting itself out. And when I mean the power button, I only mean the power button of the laser, not the surge protector. We'll keep the exhaust fan going, and it'll exhaust itself outdoors. Here we can see that it's starting to do the vector cut. That is the lettering, because we wanted to cut that out. Lettering in a vector cut is tough because you have to make sure that the lettering doesn't have pieces that get cut out with it. Like the center of the A is going to go missing. The E will lose a chunk as well. Once you hear that beep, that means you're done and your parts are ready to be taken out. Since we vector cut that means all those letters are just going to fall out. There we go. Along with that caret. There's our sign. And there's our letters. The rotary attachment is a great feature that allows you to etch into glass or any kind of round stock. First thing, the vector cutting grate will have to come out. So we're going to remove that, and that's going to be just lifted straight up out of the unit. Close the lid and place the vector cutting grate on top of the unit. Under the unit, you'll find a box that has the rotary attachment inside. So open that up, and you'll see that the rotary attachment should have a logo on it saying www.epilog.com. Make sure that it's facing the correct orientation to you. Lift it up, making sure that the left side is firmly in your grasp, and put the vector cutting grid back down into that same box. Carefully pick up the rotary attachment and place it on top of the lid of the unit. At this time, we're going to use the side panel and flip that down. We're going to place the rotary attachment on top of this so that it gives us some space when we're installing this now. With the machine on, go ahead on the control panel and click Focus. At this time, we're going to move the laser bed. You'll find it's easier to see the marking lines that we need if you open the lid. So go ahead, open the lid. We're going to look for those red lines around the laser bed. We also want to lower the bed now so that a red line appears on the back wall of the unit. So go ahead, press the down button until a red line appears on the back wall of the unit. When the red line is visible, we now have the clearance for the rotary attachment to be inserted into the machine. Go ahead, pick up the rotary attachment carefully, and drop it down on top of the laser bed, flush with the corner guide rulers. Then close the front lid. Now make sure that the rotary attachment has been slid up to the upper left corner of the unit. And we want to make sure that it rides along the guide rulers on the top and left side. When it's in there correctly, you'll find that there's no gap between the guide marker and the rotary attachment itself. This next step is very important. We can't plug the rotary attachment into the machine when the unit is on. So go ahead and toggle the power switch for the unit that's found on the right hand side, switch that to off. As soon as the unit powers down, now we can go ahead and connect the rotary attachment connector to the port that's found inside the laser bed. There's a small tab that's sitting on top of the connector, and you want to make sure that it is actually the top of the connector when you insert it. The rotary attachment consists of 2 drive wheels that are found on the left side of the unit, and 2 guide rollers that are on the right hand side of the unit. Now these guide rollers can be adjusted left to right to accommodate different size pieces of round stock. You can also adjust the height. This will become very important because we want the top surface of the material to be level with the laser and the gantry. Okay, let's place our object onto the drive wheels and the guide rollers, making sure that on the left-hand side, the material is not rubbing up against the chassis of the rotary attachment, and the right-hand guide rollers should be supporting the base, but not rubbing on any part of the machine. Take the level that you could find on the side of the machine. We want to level the top surface of the material you're pointing at laser. You can see it's almost there. What we want to do now is adjust those turning knobs so that this is in fact level at that surface. With the material in their level, go ahead and turn the laser unit back on again. We're going to have to go through the focusing portion of this, and it's going to be very similar to focusing even just traditional material. Once the machine kind of boots up, what we want to do is click on the focus button, and again use that silver spacer that is on the gantry of the unit. Go ahead, slide the spacer over. Remember, it swings down, and you want to make sure that it's just touching the top portion, in this case, of our glass. In this case here, we need to move the laser bed down, so go ahead and press the down button on the control panel, and it'll move the bed down. Do the little swing to make sure that it's just touching the surface, and once it's there, you set the focal. Go ahead now, lock in those settings, hit the reset button. That'll move the gantry back to its starting position. Something you want to keep in mind when you're designing for the rotary attachment is that in the case of glassware, your upside is really, in this case, the left side of our page. So in Word, I've adjusted the page size to represent a decent portion of the circumference of the glass. And now what I'm doing is I'm positioning document pieces like text and an image so that they're kind of twisted at 90 degrees so that the top side is the left side. Sending a file to the laser is the same as any other file, and you want to go to File and Print and click on those Properties tabs. When you do that, pull out that Power and Speed Settings table, and in this case we're going to look for glass settings and enter those into the proper areas on the Printer Properties panel. After you place those settings in there, don't forget to change the page size to the dimensions of the document that you've created. Not changing the page size will cause weird scaling issues and will definitely move the placement of where the laser will burn on your material. I really think it's best if you do a trial run of your laser job that you've sent, keeping the lid open. So what I've done here is I've kept the lid open, I went and hit go, and now I get to see how much the glass advances and then where the position of the laser etching will actually occur. If it looks good, I'll hit stop, wait until the process completes, and then I'll go ahead and hit reset. By resetting it, it changes the position, rotates the glass back to its starting point so that you can start fresh again. Now that we know where the laser will etch the glass, we're going to close the lid and just hit the go button. And now we should start to see it actually cut in or engrave onto the glass. With the glass now complete, you can open the lid and carefully pick up the glass. It'll be a little warm.